The wrench slipped from Roy's hand and clattered against the metal floor of his repair bay. He swore under his breath and wiped the grease from his fingers onto his already dirty coveralls. Another 12-hour shift fixing broken cooling systems and patching hull breaches for ships that barely deserved the effort. His back ached and his eyes burned from staring at circuit boards all day. Frontier Station. Halcyon was not exactly prime real estate in the galaxy. It sat at the edge of unclaimed space where pirates, smugglers, and people running from something all gathered to trade and refuel. Roy had ended up here 5 years ago after his family died in a transport accident. He found that working with machines was easier than dealing with people. Machines made sense. They broke in predictable ways and could be fixed with the right tools and patience. He grabbed a protein bar from his workbench and chewed it without tasting anything. His assistant droid patch rolled over on squeaky wheels, beeping something that Roy had learned meant the salvage auction listings had updated. Roy pulled up the holographic display on his worn datapad and scrolled through the offerings. Most of it was junk. Stripped freighters, broken mining equipment, pods that had been floating in space so long they were practically space dust. Then he saw it. The listing showed a partial scan of a vessel found, drifting in the Shroud Nebula. The image quality was terrible, and the database could not identify the ship's origin or design. That alone made Roy sit up straighter. In 5 years of salvage work, he had seen thousands of ship types. Every major species in the galaxy had distinctive construction patterns. But this thing looked like nothing he recognized. The hull had strange organic curves that flowed into sharp, angular sections. The metal looked almost alive in the grainy scan image. Roy zoomed in and noticed the entire surface seemed to have a texture like scales or overlapping plates. Beautiful in a way most military or commercial ships never were. The starting bid was surprisingly low. That made Roy suspicious. Either the salvage company had no idea what they had found, or there was something very wrong with the vessel that did not show up in the scans. But Roy had never been good at walking away from mysteries. He placed his bid and tried not to think about how much of his savings he was gambling on a hunch. 3 days later, he won the auction. Nobody else had even bothered to bid against him. Roy took his small tugboat out to the coordinates listed in the salvage claim. The Shroud Nebula was a nasty piece of space filled with radiation and debris that played hell with sensors. It took him 6 hours of careful navigation to find the derelict vessel floating in the purple and blue clouds of gas. When he finally got close enough to see it clearly, Roy forgot to breathe for a moment. The ship was enormous, at least 3 times the size of a standard cargo hauler, but the proportions suggested it was designed for a single pilot or maybe a very small crew. Centuries of cosmic dust covered the hull, and meteor scoring marked the surface in dozens of places. But underneath all that damage, Roy could see the craftsmanship. Every curve and angle served a purpose. This was not just a ship. It was art. He maneuvered his tugboat alongside and attached magnetic grapples to the hull. The metal felt warm under his gloved hands as he spacewalked across to check the attachment points. That was odd. Dead ships in space were usually frozen from radiation bleed-off. But this hull held heat like something was still alive inside. The tow back to Halcyon Station took another 8 hours. Roy spent most of that time staring at the derelict through his viewport. The hull seemed to shift colors depending on how the light hit it. Sometimes it looked almost copper, then silver, then something close to oil on water with rainbow patterns dancing across the surface. Roy told himself it was just the nebula's radiation playing tricks on his eyes. He docked the vessel in his private bay, one of the few perks of working on a half-abandoned station. Most of the docking rings were empty these days. Roy paid a flat fee for a bay that could fit ships up to frigate class, and he had never needed more than 1/10 of that space before. The derelict fit perfectly with room to spare for his work platforms and tool carts. Roy spent the first day just walking around the ship and taking measurements. Up close, he could see that the hull was not metal in any traditional sense. It had a crystalline quality mixed with something flexible and organic. The surface felt smooth but not cold. When he pressed his palm against it, He swore he felt a vibration like a very slow heartbeat. There were no registration codes anywhere on the hull. No identifying marks or insignias. Even the docking ports were a strange design that Roy had to adapt connectors for. Whoever built this ship had not cared about making it compatible with the rest of the galaxy. On the second day, Roy managed to cut through an external panel and access some of the internal systems. What he found made no sense. The wiring looked more like veins and arteries than circuits. The power conduits were arranged in patterns that reminded him of a nervous system. He traced one pathway and found it connected to what should have been the reactor core. But when he got there, he found only a dark chamber with no visible power source. The chamber was not empty, though. Something large had been in there. Roy found claw marks gouged deep into the walls. Each mark was as long as his forearm, and whatever made them had strength beyond any human or known alien species. He was about to leave when his hand brushed against a sealed door he had missed in the shadows. The metal warmed under his palm. Then he heard it. A voice, quiet as a whisper, speaking directly inside his mind. Finally. Someone who might understand. Roy jumped back from the door. His heart hammered in his chest. He looked around the empty chamber, but he was completely alone. The voice did not come again. He stood there for 5 full minutes waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. Roy convinced himself it was exhaustion. He had been working 16-hour days since bringing the Derelict back. Lack of sleep could make anyone hear things. He sealed up his tools and headed back to his quarters, but that night, he dreamed of flying through stars without a ship. His body covered in scales that glowed like molten metal. Roy woke with the taste of smoke in his mouth, and the memory of flying fading from his mind. He shook his head and splashed cold water on his face from the sink in his quarters. Dreams meant nothing. He had work to do. The derelict ship was waiting for him in the bay. In the morning light filtering through the station's viewport, the hull looked almost eager. Roy told himself he was being ridiculous. Ships did not have feelings. They were machines, complex ones maybe, but still just metal and circuits and fuel. He started a proper analysis of the ship's systems. The more he dug into the internal structure, the more fascinated he became. Every component was a hybrid of biological and mechanical design. The power conduits pulsed like arteries even though nothing flowed through them. The hull plating was arranged in overlapping sections that could apparently shift and move. The whole thing was engineered like a living organism that happened to be made of metal and crystal. Roy had always been good at understanding machines by intuition rather than training. He never finished formal engineering school. Could not afford it after his family died. But he had a gift for looking at broken things and knowing how they should work. This ship spoke to that gift in ways nothing else ever had. He spent days mapping the systems. The ship was designed around a central chamber that connected to everything else like a heart pumping blood. But the chamber was sealed and Roy could not find any way to open it, without cutting through walls that might be load-bearing. He worked around it instead, repairing damaged conduits and replacing corroded components with parts he salvaged from his scrap pile. The strange thing was how the ship responded to his work. When he fixed a power relay, lights flickered in sections that should still be completely dead. When he patched a breach in the hull, he felt the metal warm under his hands as if grateful. Roy started talking to the ship while he worked, a habit he had with all his repair jobs. "You are a beauty, aren't you? Someone really loved you once. I can tell by the craftsmanship. Every connection is perfect. No shortcuts. Whoever built you took their time and did it right." The ship's temperature rose by 2 degrees. Roy checked his sensors twice to make sure he was not imagining it. On the 4th day, Carla Wu stopped by his bay. She was the station administrator, a tough woman in her 50s who had seen everything and was not impressed by much. She looked at the derelict ship with narrowed eyes. "That is an interesting find, Roy. Where did you say it came from?" "Shroud Nebula. Salvage auction. Why?" Carla walked around the ship slowly, her boots echoing in the bay. "Had some inspectors come through yesterday?" "Corporate types asking questions about unusual salvage claims. They seemed very interested when I mentioned you brought in something unregistered." Roy felt his stomach tighten. What kind of corporate types? The kind that smile too much and have legal authority to make people's lives difficult. Just thought you should know. Be careful with this one. Something tells me it is more than it looks. After Carla left, Roy stood staring at his ship. He had a bad feeling about those inspectors. In his experience, when corporate interest started sniffing around something unusual, it meant either huge profits or huge trouble. Usually both. He went back to work but kept his ears open on the station's communication channels. 2 days later, he picked up chatter about new arrivals. 3 ships had docked on the commercial rings. Military-grade hulls but with corporate registrations. The crews were asking questions and offering money for information about salvage finds. Roy made a decision. He started working faster, installing camouflage systems he pulled from an old stealth drone. If someone was looking for this ship, he would make it as hard as possible to find. He routed false power readings through the station's grid to make his bay look like it was just running standard. Repair equipment. The ship helped him. He swore it did. When he installed the camouflage generators, the hull seemed to know what he wanted and adjusted its reflective properties to match. When he tried to mask the energy signature, the dormant power systems rearranged themselves into patterns that dampened their output. You have been hiding before, haven't you? You know how to disappear? Good. Let us keep you disappeared a little longer. That night, Roy found another sealed compartment hidden behind a service panel. Inside was a space about the size of a closet filled with what looked like shed skin. But it was not skin. The material was crystalline and metallic at the same time, formed in overlapping scales each as big as a dinner plate. They shimmered with inner light, even though there was no power in that section. Roy picked up one of the scales. It was lighter than it should be and warm to the touch. Beautiful. The edges were sharp enough to cut if he was not careful. He held it up to the light and saw patterns in the crystal structure that looked almost like circuit designs. What kind of creature shed scales made of metal and crystal? What kind of being needed a ship designed around their biology? Roy was starting to understand that he had not found an abandoned vessel. He had found someone's home. Someone who had been hiding for a very long time. He put the scale back carefully and sealed the compartment. His hands were shaking. This was bigger than he thought. Way bigger. And those corporate inspectors were getting closer. He heard them on the communication channels. Working their way through the station bay, Roy made his way to the sealed central chamber. He pressed both palms against the warm metal door. I don't know who you are or what you are, but I'm not going to let anyone take you apart. That's a promise. The door vibrated under his hands. Then slowly, so slowly he almost missed it, the seal began to crack open. Light spilled out from inside, golden and warm. Roy's heart pounded as he stepped back. Something was waking up inside his ship. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time, and Roy had a feeling his quiet life as a mechanic was about to get a whole lot more complicated. The chamber door opened with a sound like a sigh. Roy stood frozen as golden light poured out into the darkened bay. His mechanic's brain screamed at him to run, to get out, to call station security. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear. It always had been. Inside the chamber, something moved. At first, Roy thought it was a trick of the light. Then he saw the creature clearly and his breath caught in his throat. It was curled in the center of the chamber in a space that should have been too small to hold it. The body was covered in scales that matched the ones Roy had found in the hidden compartment. Each scale shimmered with colors that shifted between copper, gold, and deep crimson. The head was elegant and terrifying at the same time. Long and serpentine with sharp features and horns that curved back from the skull. 4 legs were tucked against the body, each ending in claws that could tear through hull plating. Wings folded so tightly against the sides that Roy had almost missed them. The whole creature pulsed with a faint internal glow like embers in a dying fire. One eye opened. It was larger than Roy's hand, the color of molten gold with a slit pupil that focused on him with unmistakable intelligence. Roy felt something brush against his mind. Not words exactly, but meaning that bypassed language completely. You are not afraid. Roy swallowed hard. I am terrified. But I am also really curious about what you are. The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. It hurt Roy's ears, but also resonated in his chest like music. Slowly, the being uncurled itself. Even diminished and clearly weak, it was magnificent. The wings spread partway, and Roy saw they were made of the same crystalline metal as the scales, with membranes that glowed from within. I am Sereth. I was once called other things in other languages, but that name will do. I am what your old Earth legends called a dragon. We were the winged flame people before the galaxy decided we were more valuable dead than alive. Roy's mind. Real dragons, the stories from Earth's mythology, were based on real creatures that flew between stars. He wanted to laugh at the impossibility of it. Instead, he asked the practical question, how long have you been asleep in there? 300 years, give or take a decade. I lost track after the first century. Time becomes strange when you slow your body down to almost nothing. Sereth moved closer to the chamber's opening. Her scales clinked softly like wind chimes. I set my ship to wake me only when someone approached with genuine care rather than greed. You restored my systems with such patience, such respect for what you did not understand. That is rare. Roy looked at the ship around them with new understanding. This whole vessel. It is part of you, isn't it? Not just a ship you fly, but something you grew. Clever human. Yes, we dragons do not build ships the way your species does. We shed our scales and shape them with plasma heat and our own will. The ship is me and I am the ship. We are bonded at a level your science does not have words for yet. Roy sat down hard on his tool cart. His legs felt weak. Why were you hunted? What did your people do? Sereth's mental voice turned cold and sad at the same time. We existed. That was our crime. Dragons can generate plasma energy from within our bodies. We can create heat that melts through any material. We can fly through space without ships if we choose, feeding on solar radiation and cosmic energy. To the industrial powers of the galaxy, we were not people. We were resources to be harvested. She showed him images then, memories that flooded into Roy's mind. Dragons flying in formations between planets, their scales glowing like small stars. Peaceful worlds where they served as guardians and mediators. Then the war. Ships with corporate logos hunting dragons through asteroid fields. Creatures being dissected while still alive so their plasma organs could be removed and weaponized. Families scattered across the galaxy, going into hiding or dying in hopeless battles. Roy felt sick. How many of you are left? I do not know. We scattered 3 centuries ago. Some fled to the Galactic Rim. Others went into deep hibernation like me. I have not heard another dragon's call in all that time. I might be the last in this sector. Perhaps the last anywhere. The weight of that loneliness hit Roy like a physical blow. 300 years alone, hiding, afraid to even sleep too deeply in case the hunters found her. He understood loneliness. He had lived with it since his family died. But his 5 years were nothing compared to 3 centuries. The inspectors on the station? Are they the same ones who hunted your people? Sereth's eyes flared brighter. Yes, they call themselves harvesters now. They have agents everywhere, always watching salvage claims and archaeological sites. They are patient and thorough. My ship's systems were broadcasting subtle energy signatures when you repaired them. Not much, but enough. They know something is here. They just do not know what yet. Roy stood up and started pacing. His mind raced through options. How long before you can fly again? Before you are strong enough to leave? A week, maybe less if I can feed properly. But I need plasma energy, raw power to metabolize. That was easy once. Now I have to hide every energy signature or draw them straight to me. Roy stopped pacing. An idea was forming. A crazy, dangerous idea that might get him killed or arrested or both. But he looked at Sereth, at this magnificent being who had been hiding and afraid for 300 years, and he knew he was going to do it anyway. The station's power grid is old and inefficient. I have been working on these systems for 5 years. I know every relay and junction. I can siphon power to you in ways that look like normal station operations. It will take some setup, but I can feed you without setting off alarms. Sarah stared at him with those golden eyes. You would risk yourself for me? We just met. You owe me nothing? Roy shrugged. You said it yourself. I care about things. People, machines, whatever. I don't like seeing beautiful things destroyed by greedy bastards. Besides, I am not letting them take apart my ship. For the first time, Sareth's mental voice held warmth. Our ship, Roy. If we do this, we do it together. Roy grinned despite his fear. Yeah, our ship. Now let me get to work before those harvesters figure out what bay you are hiding in. Roy worked through the night like a man possessed. He pulled panels from the station's walls and rerouted power conduits in ways that would look like maintenance repairs to anyone checking the logs. The trick was making the energy draw appear normal. Frontier Station Halcyon was old and inefficient by design. Half the systems leaked power into space through bad insulation and corroded connections. Roy just had to make his theft look like more of the same. Sareth stayed hidden in her chamber, but Roy could feel her presence now, a constant warm weight in the back of his mind. The mental link between them was growing stronger. She could sense his emotions, and he could catch glimpses of her thoughts. It was strange and intimate in a way Roy had not experienced with anyone since his family died. You are afraid but determined, Sareth observed as Roy spliced a power feed into her ship's systems. Your species is good at functioning despite fear. Humans are stubborn, Roy replied, not looking up from his work. We don't know when to quit. It gets us killed a lot, but it also keeps us going when smarter species would give up. I remember that about humans. Before the hunting began, my people studied many species. Humans were young then, barely reaching their own moon. But we saw potential in you. Adaptability and creativity beyond your small lifespans. Some of us argued that humans would be good allies when you matured as a species. Roy connected the final wire and felt the power begin flowing. Sareth's ship hummed with satisfaction. He could see her scales beginning to glow brighter through the open chamber door. Looks like those dragons were right about at least one human. The next morning, Director Payne came to Roy's bay. He was exactly the type Roy expected. Expensive suit, perfect smile, eyes like a shark. 2 security personnel flanked him, both carrying weapons that were technically legal, but definitely meant to intimidate. Payne looked around the bay with calculated interest. Mr. Dunn, I represent the Galactic Resource Management Corporation. We understand you recently acquired an unregistered vessel from the Shroud Nebula. Roy kept his expression neutral. Yeah, I bought salvage rights at auction. It is legal. Of course, of course. We are not questioning your claim. We are simply interested in purchasing the vessel from you. Our company specializes in recovering lost technology. We can offer you 10 times what you paid at auction. Immediate transfer. 10 times. That was serious money. Enough for Roy to leave this station and set up a proper shop somewhere better. Enough to live comfortably for years. Roy thought about Sareth hiding in her chamber. 300 years of loneliness behind her, and who knows how many more ahead. He thought about the images she had shown him of dragons being dissected alive. Not interested. The ship is a restoration project. I'm keeping it. Payne's smile never changed, but his eyes went colder. Mr. Dunn, I do not think you understand the value of what you possess. That vessel contains technology our analysts believe is highly significant. We are prepared to go as high as 50 times your purchase price. 50 times? Roy's heart hammered, but he kept his voice steady. Still not interested. Like I said, it is a personal project. I break down the salvage for parts. Most of it is scrap anyway. I see. Payne pulled out a datapad and pretended to check something. It would be unfortunate if station inspectors found safety violations in your bay, or if your salvage licenses were flagged for review. Bureaucracy can be so time-consuming. There, it was. The threat under the polite words. Roy had expected it. You do what you need to do, Director. I will do what I need to do. The ship stays with me. Payne stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded to his security team and they left. Roy waited until they were gone before he let out the breath he had been holding. His hands were shaking. That was dangerous, Sareth said in his mind. He will not stop. The harvesters never stop. I know. How much longer do you need? 3 days if the power flow continues. Maybe 2 if we push it. But Roy, they will scan the station soon. They have equipment that can detect my biosignature through any normal shielding. Once they know for certain I am here, they will bring military force. Roy thought fast. Then we leave before they scan. Can you fly now if you have to? I can fly, but not far and not fast. I am still weak. And there is something else you need to know. If we run, you become a fugitive. The harvesters have legal authority across most of civilized space. They will hunt you as surely as they hunt me. Roy looked around his bay. This had been his home for 5 years. Not much of a home, but it was all he had. His whole life fit in a storage locker in a small workshop. No family, no close friends. Nothing tying him down except habit and fear of change. Then I guess it is a good thing I don't have much to lose. We need a plan. They will watch your ship now. We cannot just undock and fly away. Over the next 2 days, Roy and Sareth worked out their escape. Roy filed paperwork claiming he was moving the Derelict to a facility on the station's commercial ring for heavy repairs. It gave him temporary clearance to undock. Not much of a head start, but enough. Meanwhile, he installed weapons on the ship. Nothing fancy, just surplus military gear he had collected over the years from salvage jobs. A plasma cannon from a scrap destroyer. Shield generators from a patrol boat. Missile pods that had seen better days but would still fire. Sareth's organic systems adapted to the human technology in ways that should have been impossible. Wrapping biomechanical connections around circuit boards like vines. Your species' weapons are crude but effective, Sareth observed. Combined with my maneuverability, we might survive an encounter. Let us hope we don't have to find out. On the 3rd day, Carla Wu came to see him. She looked worried. Roy, those corporate people brought in scanning equipment. They are starting a full station survey tomorrow morning. Whatever you are hiding, they are going to find it. Roy nodded slowly. Thanks for the warning, Carla. You have been good to me. She studied his face. You are leaving, aren't you? Roy, be careful. Those people have reach everywhere. If you run, you better run far. I plan to. Take care of yourself. That night, Roy loaded his essential tools and supplies onto the ship. Patch the droid rolled alongside him, beeping questions. Roy had built Patch from scrap over the years, and the little droid was the closest thing he had to family. Yeah, we are leaving, Patch. New adventure. Probably dangerous. You want to come or stay? Patch beeped firmly and rolled up the loading ramp. Roy smiled. Sareth emerged from her chamber for the first time since that first meeting. Her scales glowed with health now, bright enough to light the entire bay. She was magnificent and terrifying, every inch the dragon from ancient legends. Are you ready, Roy? Roy looked at his ship, his bay, his old life. Then he looked at Sareth and felt the warmth of their mental bond. Yeah, let us go find you a safe place to hide. After that, maybe we find more of your people. And if the harvesters chase us? Roy grinned and patted the plasma cannon he had installed. Then we show them why you don't mess with a dragon who has a human engineer on her side. The undocking sequence went smoothly at first. Roy transmitted his falsified work order and got clearance from station control. Sareth's ship disconnected from the bay with barely a vibration, her organic systems handling the separation with grace no human-built vessel could match. They drifted away from Frontier Station Halcyon on maneuvering thrusters, slow and careful like any normal ship being moved for repairs. Then Director, Payne's voice crackled over the communication channel. Mr. Dunn, you are ordered to return to dock immediately. We have detected unauthorized energy signatures from your vessel. Station security is authorized to use force if you do not comply. Roy looked at Sareth, who had positioned herself at the heart of the ship's control systems. Her consciousness flowed through every circuit and conduit. She was the ship in a way no human pilot could ever be. So much for our head start. Can you get us to the nebula? Hold on. Sareth's ship suddenly moved like a living thing. The hull plates shifted and the engines blazed with plasma fire that Roy had not known she could generate yet. They accelerated so fast that Roy's stomach dropped and he grabbed the nearest handhold to stay upright. Behind them, 3 harvester ships broke from their docking clamps and gave chase. The station's defensive grid came alive, firing warning shots across their bow. Sareth twisted through the weapon's fire with impossible grace. Her ship bent and flexed in ways that should have torn it apart, but the organic hull absorbed the stress and kept flying. Roy watched on the sensors as they threaded through a gap between 2 defense platforms that was barely wider than their hull. You said you were still weak. I am. This is going to hurt later. But right now, we survive? The harvester ships were faster than Roy expected. Military-grade engines pushing hulls that were designed for pursuit and capture. They spread out into a pursuit formation, cutting off escape routes and herding Sareth toward empty space where she would have no cover. Roy strapped himself into the weapons console he had rigged up. It was crude compared to proper military systems, just a targeting screen and manual firing controls, but it would have to do. He locked onto the nearest harvester and fired the plasma cannon. The shot went wide. Roy swore and adjusted his aim. Targeting from a moving ship while the pilot performed evasive maneuvers was nothing like the simulators he had practiced on. Sareth, I need you to hold steady for 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds. They will hit us. Trust me. Sareth leveled out. Immediately, weapons fire from all 3 harvester ships converged on their position. Shields flared as impacts hammered against them. Roy ignored the alarm screaming about shield integrity and focused on his targeting screen. He led the nearest ship, accounting for their velocity and distance, and fired. The plasma bolt caught the harvester directly in their engine housing. The ship spun out of control, venting atmosphere and falling behind. Not destroyed, but definitely out of the fight. Got one. 2 more to go. But the remaining harvesters had learned from their mistake. They split up, coming at Sareth from different angles to divide her attention. One of them fired something Roy had never seen before. A net made of crackling energy that spread out as it flew, big enough to engulf their entire ship. What is that? Plasma drain net? If it hits us, it will tap directly into my energy. They will drink me dry, and I will be too weak to resist. Roy, you need to cut the connection between my nervous system and the hull if that happens. It will hurt me badly, but it is better than capture. Roy pulled up the ship's internal schematics. Show me which connections. Sareth highlighted several key junctions in his display. They pulsed with the same rhythm as her heartbeat. Cutting those would be like severing arteries. I'm not letting it come to that. Hang on. Roy fired the missile pods, not at the ships but at the plasma net itself. The missiles exploded in a chain reaction that disrupted the net's cohesion. It fell apart into harmless energy wisps that dissipated in space. The harvester ships immediately fired another net, but Roy was ready this time. He detonated missiles in their path again, creating a wall of explosions that the nets could not pass through. They only have so many of those nets. We just need to survive until they run out or we reach the nebula. The chase continued for another hour. Sareth flew like she was dancing, every movement precise and beautiful, even while weapons fire filled the space around them. Roy manned the weapons and shields, covering their retreat and taking shots when he could. They worked together with a coordination that surprised them both, communicating through the mental link faster than words ever could. Then the Shroud Nebula appeared ahead of them. A wall of purple and blue gas that scrambled sensors and disrupted targeting systems. Sareth dove into it without hesitation. The harvester ships followed, but their movements became erratic as their instruments failed. Roy took advantage of their confusion. He fired the plasma cannon at an asteroid in the nebula, superheating one side until it fractured and exploded into debris. The shrapnel cloud expanded between them and their pursuers, forcing the harvester ships to slow down or risk damage. "One more trick," Roy muttered. He routed power from their shields to the engines. Dangerous, but it gave them a burst of speed that pulled them ahead. Sareth took them deep into the nebula, following paths that existed only in her memory from 300 years ago. The harvester ships fell behind, unable to navigate the hazardous space without proper sensors. Finally, after what felt like hours of flying blind, Sareth announced that they were clear. Roy sagged in his seat, exhausted and shaking from adrenaline. "Did we lose them?" "For now. But they know I am alive. They will search. They will bring more ships. We bought ourselves time, nothing more." Roy looked around the ship's interior. Alarms were still blaring from a dozen different systems. They had taken damage in several places. Patch was already rolling around doing emergency repairs, beeping frantically about hull breaches and power fluctuations, but they were alive. They had escaped. Where do we go now? Sareth was quiet for a moment. Then she sent him an image through their link. An old station floating in the nebula, abandoned but still intact. A place dragons had used as a refuge long ago. There, we can repair and plan our next move. Roy, what you did back there, fighting with me, covering my weaknesses with your weapons, it was exactly how my people once fought alongside humans in the old days, before the corporations turned everything into profit margins. Roy managed a tired smile. "Well, we make a good team. You fly, I shoot, simple. It is more than that. You adapted to my needs instantly, anticipated what I required. That is not training. That is instinct. That is partnership." The warmth in Sareth's mental voice made Roy's chest tight. He had not felt part of something bigger than himself in 5 years. Had not felt like he mattered to anyone. Now here he was, a fugitive in a stolen ship with a dragon from legend. And it felt more right than anything in his life ever had. Yeah, partners, I like the sound of that. Patch. Beeped agreement, and Roy laughed despite everything. The ancient way station floated in the nebula like a ghost from another age. It was built in a style Roy had never seen before, all flowing curves and crystalline structures that caught and reflected the nebula's light. Dragon architecture? Sareth guided her ship into a docking bay that opened at their approach. Recognizing her biosignature even after 3 centuries, inside, emergency power flickered to life. The station was old but still functional. Dragon engineering had been built to last. Roy spent the next week repairing the damage from their escape. The hull had taken several direct hits that needed patching. Power systems were strained from overuse. The shields needed complete recalibration. But as he worked, Roy realized he was happier than he had been in years. He had a purpose again. Someone depending on him? A friend. Sareth recovered her strength in the station's central chamber, which had been designed as a resting place for dragons. She could draw ambient energy from the nebula itself here, feeding slowly but safely. As she healed, she told Roy stories about her people. We were not always warriors or fugitives. We were artists and philosophers. We helped young species navigate the difficulties of joining the galactic community. We mediated disputes because we could sense emotions and intentions through our mental gifts. We were trusted. Roy welded a patch over a hull breach and listened. He liked hearing about the time before the hunting. It made Sareth's voice less sad. What changed? Greed. Someone discovered that our plasma organs could be harvested and used as power sources. Incredibly efficient, renewable if kept alive in stasis. One dragon could power an entire city. The corporations saw profit. Governments saw weapons. We went from people to resources in a single generation. That is sick. That is reality for many species in this galaxy. Humans are lucky. You have nothing unique enough to harvest. Your only value is your labor and your creativity. That gives you freedom other species envy. Roy thought about that while he worked. Humans were common, unremarkable in terms of physical abilities or special powers. But maybe that was a strength. Nobody hunted humans for their organs or skin. They were just people, free to choose their own paths. Your people saw something in humans, though. You said some dragons thought we would be good allies. We saw adaptability. Humans can thrive almost anywhere, learn almost anything, bond with almost any species. You are flexible in ways most species are not. And you have a stubborn refusal to accept things as they are. You always push to make things better, or at least different. It makes you exhausting but also valuable. Roy grinned. I will take that as a compliment. Over the following days, Roy finished the repairs and added improvements. He reinforced the hull with materials he found in the station's storage bays. He upgraded their shield generators using dragon power crystals that amplified the output tenfold. He even installed a cloaking system that combined human stealth technology with Sereth's natural camouflage abilities. The ship became something unique. A perfect hybrid of human engineering and dragon biomechanics. Neither fully organic nor fully mechanical, but something new that was stronger than either alone. Sereth watched him work with fascination. You have a gift, Roy. You understand systems at an intuitive level. You see how things should fit together even when they are from completely different sources. That is rare. I just think about what makes sense. Dragons need flexibility and speed so your ships flow like living things. Humans need durability and firepower, so we build tough and hit hard. Combine them, and you get the best of both. It is more than that. You are building bridges. Between species, between technologies, between ways of thinking. That is what dragons once did. That is what the galaxy needs again. Roy stopped working and looked at Sereth. She was fully healed now, her scales bright and strong, her presence in his mind warm and constant. They had become something more than pilot and passenger, more than dragon and human. They were partners in a way that transcended species. What do we do now? We can hide here, but hiding is not really living. Sereth moved to the window that looked out into the nebula. Her scales reflected the purple and blue light, making her look like a living aurora. Before I went into hibernation, I heard rumors. Other dragons who survived and went into hiding like me. I never searched for them because I was afraid of drawing attention. But now, with you, with a ship that can hide from scanners and fight if needed, maybe we could find them. Bring them together. Remind the galaxy that we still exist. Roy felt excitement building in his chest. A rescue mission. Find the survivors and give them a safe place. I like it. This station could hold dozens of dragons if we restore it fully. It would be dangerous. The harvesters will still be looking for us. Other threats might arise. We would be making ourselves targets. Yeah, but we would be making ourselves targets with a purpose. Besides, you have already proven dragons and humans work well together. Imagine what a whole group could do. Dragons providing power and mobility, humans providing engineering and tactics. We could protect species that are being exploited. Fight back against the corporations. Make things better. Sereth turned to look at him, her golden eyes bright with hope. You really believe we could do that? I believe we can try. That is what humans do. We try things everyone says are impossible, and sometimes we succeed just out of pure stubbornness. Sereth made that sound that was laughter and music at the same time. Then we try. But Roy, if we do this, your life will never be simple again. You will be a fugitive forever, hunted, possibly killed. Are you sure? Roy thought about his small bay on Frontier Station Halcyon. His lonely existence fixing broken machines for people who barely remembered his name. 5 years of just surviving, never really living. Then he thought about the last few weeks. The excitement of discovery, the thrill of the chase, the satisfaction of building something new with Sereth. The warmth of having a friend who trusted him completely. I am sure. Let us go find your people and show the galaxy what dragons and humans can do together. They spent another week preparing. Roy loaded supplies and equipment. Sereth tuned her ship systems until they sang in perfect harmony. Patch integrated himself into the ship's computer, providing an AI interface that could handle complex calculations while Roy focused on maintenance. Finally, they were ready. Roy stood with Sareth in the docking bay, looking at their ship. It was beautiful, deadly, a symbol of what cooperation between species could achieve. "Do you have a heading?" Roy asked. Sareth closed her eyes and reached out with her mental senses, searching for the faint traces of other dragons across vast distances. After a moment, she pointed toward a section of space far from civilized systems. "There, I feel something. It is very faint, but it is there. Another dragon, maybe more than one." Roy grinned and headed for the ship. Patch beeped excitedly and rolled after him. "Then let us go. We have got dragons to rescue and a galaxy to explore." They launched from the way station together, human and dragon, flying toward an uncertain future but flying together. Behind them, the station's lights remained on, a beacon for any dragons who might find their way home. Ahead, the galaxy waited with all its dangers and possibilities. Roy felt Sareth's presence in his mind, warm and strong. Felt the ship respond to his touch like a living thing. Felt purpose flowing through him for the first time in years. This was what he had been missing. Not just work, but meaning. Not just survival, but living. Not just machines to fix, but friends to protect and a cause worth fighting for. The stars stretched out before them, full of lost dragons waiting to be found and corporations that needed to learn that some things could not be hunted into extinction. Not when a stubborn human mechanic and a determined dragon decided to fight back. Sareth's mental voice filled his mind with warmth and determination. "Ready, partner?" Roy smiled and pushed the engines to full power. "Always. Let us go change the galaxy." And together they flew into the unknown.